Yeah. The wisdom, accept the things I cannot change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. So this is like a little yogic inquiry in itself. And then if you sit down and you go up to the brain and you see what it's freaking out about on any given day or time, whatever it's rambling about, see how much of that is about what you cannot change. And about 90% of the contents, at least of this head, is pretty much what I can't change, based on past and future mostly. Yeah. So there's a huge portion of the mental contents which I cannot change, but the mental system does not get it, essentially. The mental system does not get the prayer. It doesn't matter how many meetings I go to, how many times I say it. The head just keeps going because it's conditioned, yeah? So it still thinks it can change things that it can't change. And it's beautiful because that prayer in the 12 steps essentially helps tune that mental system. Yeah, the mental system keeps trying to change what it cannot change, and it will ruminate about it all day to the point where people will go nuts, ruminating on the things they cannot change. Um, all taking those thoughts to be their thoughts. But the basis of the prayer is not about, am I this or am I this? It's just accepting what you cannot change. And then if you sit down and you look at what the head is anxious about, most of it you cannot change. But the mental keeps going. It just keeps thinking it can change it. And it's all preceded by the word I. I can do this. I can change this. I can, but. It's all preceded by that word I. And I was just writing about it. I don't know why, but there was a lot of, there's a lot of anxiety, obviously, in the world, and you see it in yoga studios. And you see that in my own experience, that most of the mental anxiety is about what I cannot be changed. At least I cannot change it as an individual. Yeah. And the more I try to think I can, the more that gets fired up. So the prayer is you accept the things you cannot change the things you can. And if you have a piece of paper and you look at the mental and you start writing down what you cannot change, the first thing would be other people, essentially in the form of AA. Yeah. Other people. And then the brain goes, well, I could probably change my kid. No, I definitely can't change my mother. She's committed to her 70-year-old thought process. It ain't gonna change. Yeah, can't change other people, and then the list goes on essentially, right down to like if you really take it into an inquiry, the body itself. This body could get sick today. Yeah. Um, this is an interesting yoga inquiry. So, what does that have to do with yoga? If the yoga is about suffering less, it would be about highlighting what is causing suffering, which would be the mental ruminating about what it cannot change. But if I'm listening to it, I'm going to keep driving as if I can change a bunch of stuff that I cannot change. Yeah. So the mental doesn't get it. I hear the mental from before it. We, as what we are, let's say, one open awareness, hear the mental system. Yeah. You can hear it go off and telling you that it can change a bunch of stuff, which it cannot change. And if you don't meet it with a message or a prayer to actually look at it, then we just keep going, just constantly, yeah. And then there's just more anxiety and more mental content because it can't change the thing it's trying to change. So it's just going to bound it with more mental. Uh, so if yoga would be about suffering less, it would be about highlighting what's creating suffering in the first place. And that prayer highlights a big thing in there, yeah. It says, accept what you cannot change, which for the alcoholic is like climbing a mountain. Because we are very self-centered and we are very confident, ironically, in ourselves. And that causes a lot of problems. So accept what you cannot change what you can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. You could probably change the word wisdom with honesty. Because when I sit down and I actually am honest about what I can change, There's very few things that the head is ruminating about that I can change. Yeah. And it always pretty much starts with other people. Pretty much always starts with other people. It's quite important, I feel, because it's not used to demean the individual, but it puts in the sense of individuality, let's say, in the right seat. So it puts the cart behind the horse rather than the horse behind the cart in many ways. And that's when it becomes very helpful. And then we get a lot of relief. It's amazing. It's called the Serenity prayer. Yeah. So accept the things you cannot change. Just change the things you can. Yeah. And know the difference. And what will be the outcome will be more serenity. And that I feel that prayer has long legs. It's like step one in recovery. You could live a whole life on step one. There's a guy I go to meetings with. He's been sober for 17 years. And that's all he says. The only step I do is step one. Powerless, and when I try to take power that I don't have, my life becomes unmanageable. That's all he's done for 17 years, this guy. Yeah. And he's like one of the more serene people at the meeting. uh, so it's a little inquiry you can do if you sit down and take a piece of paper or whatever and just start writing down the anxieties and then be honest on what you can change. And if you cannot change it, it would be very wise to just go right to start accepting it, because the fact that you can't change it is not going to change. Yeah. And then if you see that, you put down a lot of what the mental is selling you, and then tomorrow it's going to sell you the same thing. This person's still pissing me off, and I'm going to make them different. And then you just go back to the fact in a way. And all of that mental ruminating about things you cannot change starts to give up, essentially, because it's just like, this person is not listening to me anymore. Yeah, the paradox of step one actually is when people admit powerlessness, they feel a huge sense of power.
That's
This
right.
is the paradox of like the 12 step. People are very scared to look at like step one. But what comes with the realization of powerlessness is this much more subtle yet profound sense of power. So the thing about the Serenity prayer is you see the mental system ruminating about what you cannot change. Yeah. There's an awareness of that, which gives you this point of choice. So you're now no longer under the dictatorship of what's talking to you in the head or wherever it's talking and trying to change what it cannot. You see that you cannot change it. Yeah. And then you accept that you cannot change that. And the movement gets nullified. And then there's something before it, let's say, or no thing or whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah, because what the mental system is gripping onto all these things that it's trying to change. It's very anxious about everything, so it wants to change all this stuff. But I think even in psychology, that's considered a false sense of self. So when
Self.
you meet it with a prayer that says accept what you cannot change, what's trying to change everything gets nullified, but you don't get nullified. You get like lit up. The thing opens up, yeah, because you're not what's trying to change what cannot change.
Yeah.
This is the point of Advaita. So if you see that, if you can see the head trying to change what it cannot change, then there's a seeing of that. Yeah, this in a way is like its own negation. That movement keeps going. Tomorrow it will try to change what it cannot change. But if you see it, you just simply don't touch it, really. And then as the more you do that, the less it fires because it's not getting a breath. And it knows it's not getting a breath, the mental. Yeah. And then seemingly the life just gets more serene. But the thing about it is, like you said, I thought if I just gave up that I was giving up, yeah. But when I gave up, what's giving up is not what I am. What is giving up is a false sense of J-ness, let's say. And then there's awareness before that. So there's this like surge of power. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff like people in recovery, they get sober, yeah, they admit powerlessness, and then they're super active. You know what I mean? So like whatever you see, like Thich Nhat Hanh knows he's not a body and a mind, and then he's doing tons of shit as a body and a mind. Yeah, because there's a surge of movement there. This is the that's like the paradox in many ways. Yeah, that's a beautiful like example of that. I always thought if I gave up that I was just it was over, you know. But what's giving up or what you're seeing cannot change what it thinks it can change is not you in the first place. That's a false sense of movement. And when that's given up on, then there's a whole thing behind it. Yeah, that's great. Oh, nice. Comedy shows are great too. Yeah.